Aimer ready with another Mission Impossible episode review. I love long weekends. It's Friday night, and I'm rocking and rolling with some pushing out these reviews for Season 7. So let's go, Season 7, Episode 9, which is simply called Hit. We start this one out with a guy named Sam Dexter hanging out with his girlfriend Vicky Wells. They nicely tell us about how bummed they are that Sam is going to jail for tax evasion, and what a shame, and boy, if I ever find whoever, dimed me. Sam gets a call from his buddy Arthur Reynolds in the DA's office, who tells him that Vicky is the one who tipped them off. Sam tells Vicky to get dressed as he cuts the brake line in his car, telling her to go to an address where she'll be given some money to tide her over while he's in the big house. And off she goes. Off a cliff, that is. Jim gets instructions aboard an anchored ship. The mission: Sam's extortion racket is still running thanks to his partner known only as the General. The IMF must discover who the General is and prove that Sam murdered Vicky to put the organization out of business. We get an apartment scene with the most ridiculous amount of unnecessary expository dialogue ever. Even worse than a few episodes ago in Cocaine. Where the IMF is telling each other, oh, I'm going to be this person, and anyway, I'll talk more about that in the discussion. Bad apartment scene. We have a guest agent named Jack as well. So Jim goes to Reynolds' office as an aggressive U.S. attorney named David Simon, who has had the house of Sam's lieutenant, Ben Murdoch, searched in an effort to pin Vicky's death on Sam, despite the fact that the case has been closed. Jim tells Reynolds that there's an eyewitness to Vicky's murder, and he's got a plan to make the charges stick. Reynolds leaves an envelope with information in the bathroom for Murdoch and tells him to be careful because Jim means business. Murdoch visits Sam in prison and is told to find out who the eyewitness is. Willie and Barney go into the prison as inmates, and they stage a face-off for the benefit of Sam's crew. Sam is impressed by Barney standing up for himself against the bigger man. Later in the game room, Willie's stunt double knocks around Sam's goon easily, and even roughs up Dexter a bit. Barney comes in, and his stunt double is able to subdue Willie's stunt double, impressing Sam even further. Mimi comes to the DA's office as Sally Bukic to tell Jim and Reynolds that she got a call from Vicky, her friend, who was sad about Sam's impending prison stay, so she was on her way over to see her. And she saw the two of them leaving the house, with Sam putting Vicky in the car and then callously watching it crash, doing nothing. Reynolds notes that Mimi, as Sally, has come forward as part of a deal to get her out of a drug rap, and asks her what car Sam drove to leave the scene of the crash. It was a big black car, right? And Mimi says that it was. Reynolds smiles as he knows Mimi is lying. Sam tries to enlist Barney to be a part of his crew, but is turned down. He and his goon Gordon discover that Barney was coming up with an escape plan, with lifer Gordon lamenting that everything seems so hopeless for him, while Sam only has a few months left in the joint. Murdoch tells Sam about Mimi's Swiss cheese deposition, it's full of holes, which they figure is obviously someone trying to move in on his action. Reynolds visits Mimi at her apartment, trying to get more details about her story, and then angrily tells her he knows she's lying about the car because the car was never there, and threatens to send her away for perjury if she doesn't tell him who's put her up to it. But Mimi says nothing, with Reynolds realizing she must be quite scared of who it is if she's willing to face that level of risk. Reynolds leaves and Murdoch comes up, grabbing Mimi to beat the truth out of her, and then suddenly coming face to face with himself. Jack in a mask, of course, and Jim knocks him out from behind with the usual ring to the neck. Jack leaves shortly after, coming towards Reynolds' car, but getting run over by Willie in a drive-by hit and run. Jim and Reynolds go to the hospital to talk to Murdoch as Dr. Willie watches. Jack, as Murdoch, says that Mimi was hired by the General to frame Sam and take Murdoch out just before he dies. Jim and Reynolds confront Sam about it, who claims complete ignorance of anybody called the General. In private, Reynolds tells Sam what Murdoch discovered, and it seems that the General is indeed behind it all. Sam tells Arthur to get a contract arranged on the General, and then cops storm the room, with Jim saying that the room was bugged and Reynolds is under arrest for corruption. Jim tells Sam he's lost Murdoch, he's lost Reynolds, all his goons have been transferred to other facilities, he's all alone. But Sam's not interested in making a deal because he figures he has one more card to play. Sam tells Barney he knows about his escape plan and offers him $10,000 for a contract hit if he can do it tonight. Barney demands $50,000, and Sam agrees as long as Barney takes him with him temporarily. Sam will return in the morning to cover up the escape and then do the little bit of time left in his sentence. Jim and Willie set up a car for Barney to use, and the two escapees pull the Shawshank Redemption routine, escaping through a sewer. Dexter triggers a cave-in at the expected point of escape, forcing Barney to go to a side tunnel, not in the IMF's plan, but they manage to get out, and Barney says no problem, he's got a car a couple of miles away. But just then, a couple of kids, one of whom I'm sure is Tony Dow, Wally Cleaver actually, stop by for a makeout session, leaving the keys in the car. So Sam forces Barney with his pistol, how he had that in prison, I don't know, to get into the car, and they go, with Jim finding out what happened from the prison warden as the car was reported stolen, forcing Jim to adjust the plan. Willie wakes up the real Murdoch, who's in a room tied to a chair, telling him that he's part of a new crew that wants to take over, and then offer Murdoch a piece of the pie if he will help them eliminate the General, as Sam is no longer a factor. A call comes in and Willie says, I found the General without Murdoch's help, so he just leaves him there in the room. Murdoch manages to free himself but finds the door locked, so he makes a call which gives the IMF a number to trace. Cops burst in and arrest Murdoch before the call goes through, and Willie heads to the address, which is the usual nice-looking mansion that we've seen in many episodes. Sam rings the doorbell and Barney overpowers the man who answers it, and they head inside to the living room, where we see a fellow in front of a large computer setup. He presses a button to hide it and demands to know who Barney is. Sam follows him in, greeting the man as the General and brandishing his gun. Thinking quickly, Barney gets Sam to admit he plans to kill them both and make it look like they shot each other, set it all up like an accident, right? Same way he killed Vicky. Sam admits his guilt in that as Jim and Willie get to the room and take both Sam and the enraged General into custody. Jim and Barney figure that the computer will give them everything they need to smash the organization, and they leave. Mission accomplished. I'm going to do my discussion in kind of the opposite way as I normally do it. I'm going to start by telling you the blurb I wrote during the first time when I was thinking about the episodes and kind of trying to rank them a little bit. I hadn't actually fully watched the episodes. These blurbs were basically, from my memory of watching the episode and what I remembered about it. So what I said about this one is, this is another cookie-cutter plot, where basically the whole story is telegraphed by the IMF from the very beginning. Heck, in the apartment scene, they even tell each other what names they're going to use and what roles they're going to play in the con, because clearly the viewers are morons and couldn't figure that out as the episode unfolded. And then I put in brackets, pro tip, the viewers aren't really morons, the writers just needed to kill time because the plot is so thin. This level of expository dialogue reaches the depressing depths seen in the second series run, which is really saying something. The villain isn't someone we really care much about seeing taken down, and he's yet another declawed faux tough guy, the likes of whom we've seen way too much over the years. It's difficult to stay interested in this one, despite Robert Reed as the assistant DA, who is working both sides, offering a little bit of liveliness. That was my review based on my memories of this episode. Often when I do this, I say I'm going to retract some or much of what I said in my blurb. This time, I'm not really going to retract any of it. I think I've pretty much hit it head on when I wrote this blurb here. I'm going to start this one, as I said, I'm kind of doing this the opposite way. I'm going to start this one talking about the bad. I think you can probably tell from what I've said and where I'm going with this that I'm not going to give this a very good grade, and this is not really a great episode. Let me start with the bad, though, and I'll talk it through. There's no new ground covered here compared to anything we've seen in any other episode. It is, I don't know if it's completely a cookie cutter plot. I did say that in the blurb. It's right there. It's as close as is humanly possible, I think, to being cookie cutter if it is not absolute cookie cutter. The plot is quite thin. The screenplay is quite thin. That's why the writers had to waste quite a bit of time in the apartment scene and tell us things that, we could have easily figured out as the episode went on. And yeah, I'm going to reiterate, that apartment scene tells us maybe not the entire story, but it certainly gives us all the plot devices in the first couple of minutes of the episode. So, now it's just a matter of, well, let's just see how it plays out. Let's just watch it unfold. Another thing, which is very, very typical of a lot of the plots that we've seen in Season 7 so far, the IMF is in control all the way. This time they even have police ready with them every step of the way to deal with, Arthur Reynolds, with Murdoch, and others, as the plot progresses. There's little difficulty, even with the kind of misstep at the end. And I'll talk a little bit more about that as we go. About the guest stars. The guest cast is decent, but in terms of characters, this episode is all about Sam Dexter, obviously. And I think that Dane Clark, the actor who plays Sam, he's okay. He's a very prolific actor. I looked him up. And at this point, he's 60 years of age. Somehow, he just does not fit the type. I just don't feel that he's a good fit for this role. Maybe not even for this show, although that might be a little bit unfair. He was a character actor in all sorts of dramas in the 70s. But this just doesn't fit him right for whatever reason. As an underworld boss and a sugar daddy for Barbara Rhodes, who plays Vicky Wells, who's just as tall as he is. I was going to say that she's actually taller than him, but I looked it up. They're actually equal height, interestingly enough. And she's just way out of his league. Interesting note, Barbara Rhodes is 34 years younger than Dane Clark. Right? At the time that this episode aired, Dane Clark was 60 and Barbara Rhodes was 26. I don't know why. I just don't see it. I just think that was not good casting here of Dane Clark as Sam Dexter. Speaking of Sam Dexter, he is a villain who gets all 3 kisses of death. He's lame, he is a schmuck, and he is completely unengaging. I wrote in my blurb, is anybody really interested in seeing this guy, taken down? Does he generate any feeling or emotion? He certainly doesn't do that in me as the viewer. I'm not really interested in seeing this guy get taken down. I'm just not. I don't really care what happens to him. Moving on to what is okay and somewhat good. The other guest stars, especially Robert Reed. Robert Reed is decent in this episode. I liked Frank Christie as Murdoch. I think, if you want to talk about a good casting decision, Frank Christie was a good casting decision. He fits the role as Ben Murdoch. You'll remember him from you might remember him from the season 6 episode, the second to last episode called Casino, where he was also the second in command in that one to Jack Cassidy in the casino. And I thought he fit that role really, really well there. So those were some pretty decent casting decisions. So if I want to point at something decent in this episode, I'll point to those two. Then I want to do kind of a point counterpoint, and I almost feel like a broken record when I'm talking about this, but man, season 7 and the endings to these episodes, it's just, wow, this is really something. The final act where Sam Dexter, and Barney go through that side tunnel. And so, the plan doesn't go, quite exactly to the way that Jim had it laid out. And the team has to improv a little bit because they go in a car that they didn't expect was even going to be there. That was actually quite nice. There was some potential there. There really was. And then, the team has to kind of change their plan, and they actually have to use Ben Murdoch in a way which was quite unexpected. And I really liked that, the way that Willie, told Murdoch what he needed to tell him to, convince Murdoch, compel him in a sense, to make the call to the general so they could trace it and find out, where they had to go. Even after that, when Sam and Barney get there to the mansion, which we've seen in so many episodes, they get there. There's a scene at the doorbell where, the guy opens the door and he recognizes Sam, and then Barney comes in and knocks him out. And they get into the living room where they find the guy who actually turns out to be the general. Up until that point, that was actually really good. I had completely forgotten when I was watching this with this episode again that sequence had happened. Completely forgotten. I said, you know what? I might have to rethink some of this here, because I really liked that 4 or 5 minutes of action was pretty good. It was. I'll give credit where credit is due. But then then they ruined it all, where Barney uses a delay tactic to talk to Sam and say, hey man, wait a minute, and then somehow Sam lamely confesses to murdering Vicky. I'm not sure if that's actually something that would hold up in court or whatever. I mean, I guess I actually thought, and I think that this would have made the ending significantly better, if somehow or other Barney, using sharp eyes or whatever, or using, something in his mind, after having seen the elaborate computer setup that the general had behind his bar, if he noticed something, that there was a recording device, some kind of tape recorder or something that they could use in order to say, hey, I got his confession or something like that. Or even if Barney had something. I mean, come on, the IMF had basically been in control of all of this. Barney could have had a device, on him, a recording device or something like that. It wouldn't have been a big deal to do that. And that would have made the ending make a heck of a lot more sense. But unfortunately, what they do is they just have Sam make a lame confession, just, for no other reason, to allow just a little bit of time for the IMF to burst in. The IMF consisting of Jim and Willie at that point. And then they just round up the two bad guys, and that's it. The general calls Sam an idiot for getting fooled the way that he did. He is a lame schmuck. And then we get just a fairly unsatisfying ending. Not to mention that it is another one of those, oh, that guy was the general. Oh, okay. Next episode, please. That's happened before. One of the foremost ones where I noticed this was back in the season 5 episode Homecoming, where there was a murderer on the loose, and then we finally figure out who it is. And I commented then, as I've commented in some other episodes since, like, oh, okay, well, it was that guy. Oh, fine, let's move on. Same thing here. So again, some potential there with that ending. And they just kind of really blew it. They just couldn't pull it together right at the end. And that's where it just kind of goes downhill. Given all of that I've said, I'm going to give this episode a D-. I went into it with the blurb that I wrote saying that this is going to get an F. There really isn't anything good here. Even Robert Reed, I was going to say, is not enough to bring this out from an F to a D-. But when I saw that last act again, as I just mentioned, I said to myself, nah, you know what? This is better than some episodes where we don't even have that, that little bright light that we can point to as part of the episode where, you're at least a little bit engaged in the plot, even if you're not so much in the characters. And I think I'm going to leave it at that. This is a lot longer than I thought that this review was going to be, but I'm very, very glad that I did talk it out. Thank you guys, as always, for watching. Let's see how much time I have over this long weekend. It's only Friday night. Monday is Canadian Thanksgiving, so, depending on what other work I have, I may have quite a bit of time. So I'll see how many of these I can pump out here. Thank you guys for watching. Please like this video. Please subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, and please leave your comments. Thank you again, and I'll see you next time.